being here, and thanks for the opportunity to present indeed the state and outlook of the Environment Report. It's a report which we do every 5 years, and it brings together the best knowledge on environment and climate issues and gives an update on where we stand. It links it to the key policy domains and then looks at a way forward. And I think it's important to say that at this moment the report is extremely clear indeed on the message of we are facing unprecedented and interconnected challenges and time is running out. Whether you look at climate change, where it's obvious that we are not on a trajectory to be well below 2 degrees as we agreed in Paris, on biodiversity, where since 2000 the EU has said we would halt biodiversity loss, and 20 years later we are not near this, so we keep seeing species going extinct. Or on resource use, which gets little attention actually, but is the foundation of our economy, how we use resources and how we keep them in the economy in a much more sustainable way with less impact on human health, on biodiversity and on climate. I think it's clear that there is no more business as usual. From now on, it's business as unusual. And I think the policy responses that are embedded in the European Green Deal are indeed pointing in the direction of a policy business as unusual. We are dealing with urgency. It's important to point out that we are already dealing with irreversibilities. Climate change is happening. Species are lost. We see soil degradation that is not reversible in the short term. So irreversibilities are already part of the problem we are facing. We are talking about tipping points which could speed up the negative spiral of unsustainability, and we understand better that all of these things are interconnected. And in policy terms, this means that if we fail on the circular economy, we will fail on biodiversity and on climate change. If we fail on climate change, it will have impacts on the 2 others, and the same for the 3rd. Yeah? Now, we mapped the performance, you could say, of how Europe's environment is evolving, and we linked that to European policy targets and objectives. And I think the message there is clear. While we have made progress in a number of areas, and I think in the climate change package that will reach its endpoint in 2020, that is obvious. Europe is the only region that has stuck to its climate promises until now. They have delivered, and we see better air quality and better water quality and less industrial pollution. Overall, there is a very serious implementation gap. There are too many places in Europe where the policies that we have agreed are not implemented. Our colour scheme of where we stand colours too much red, yeah? And we would see much more green if countries would have implemented what was agreed. Overall, the reason why we are worried about the future boils down to the following point. We are not addressing the critical pressure points on the environment, on natural capital and on climate. And they come down to sectors. They come down to systems. The energy system, the food system, the transport and mobility system and the built environment. They use too much energy and of the wrong kind. They use too many resources that are not kept in their materials and their value in the cycle. They have too much impact on biodiversity and on human health. And indeed, these systemic approaches, which I think are foundational also in what we know of the Green Deal, they hint at a different type of policy making. But on top of a different type, we also know that we will need to speed up and scale up solutions. Yeah? And at the same time, to create the space in our society and in our economy to speed up and scale up solutions, I think it's paramount that we also speed up and scale up what we should stop doing. And that is making or giving subsidies that are not compatible with this agenda, that is moving out of investments that are not compatible with this agenda, that is supporting tax systems that are not driving this agenda forward. So it's both speeding up and scaling up of solutions and creating the space by speeding up and scaling up what we should no longer do. We also attribute quite a bit of attention to the social justice dimension in the agenda. There is a lot of talk about we want to avoid stranded assets. I would say we have just as much responsibility to avoid stranded workers and stranded regions in Europe, and that is where I think a lot of attention will have to be paid. A big risk, and I'm nearing the end of my short introduction, a big risk is that we would make the wrong investments. Investments that are costly because they are focusing on marginal efficiency gains in the systems that we already have. And ask any engineer or economist, they will say that marginal efficiencies become increasingly costly, and we know that they will not lead us to 2050 objectives. So they are dead-end streets. They are not leading to the fundamental transitions that we need. Improving the combustion engine or improving the performance of coal-fired power plants is not the way forward. So we need to move from a logic of investments in dead-end streets to investments in the breakthrough technologies and solutions towards the future. A final point that I would like to make is that you can proclaim this from a press room and from the decision-making rooms in Brussels or in other capitals in Europe, but this will involve whole societies. We are talking about societal transitions, so we will need to involve the creative potential, the energy, the enthusiasm also for this type of agenda across Europe at different scales in our cities, and that's where we will have to bring this agenda. That's where it will come to life, not only in big reports, and I of course encourage you to read the report, but it has to become a life agenda for European society. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like